From the heart comes a warning filled with bloody good cheer. Remember what happened as the 14th draws near.
It happened once. It happened twice. Cancel the dance or it'll happen thrice.
It's a madman, as eloquent with words as he is with a pickaxe. We're still up all night, and this episode we watched My Bloody Valentine.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to USA Up All Night with me, Rhonda.
Hi, I'm Gilbert Godfrey, the comedian in the cupboard, for USA Up All Night.
In this movie, you'll see two of your favorite stars. Now, if you drink enough beer, you'll start seeing more of your favorite stars.
Stay with me on USA Up All Night.
Welcome to a special Halloween edition of Still Up All Night, the podcast that celebrates the so bad they're good films of USA Up All Night. I'm Travis Yates, and this episode, we're heading north of the border for the 1981 Canadian slasher film, My Bloody Valentine. But first, I'm joined by our resident horror genre expert. That's right, it's Christmas time for my co-host, Rob Cady. So, Rob, or should I say, Merry Christmas to you.
Absolutely, and I love that we are, in honor of Halloween, reviewing a Valentine's Day movie.
Yeah, so. Which we'll explain why here in just a bit. But first, I have to ask, Rob, every year you do your 31 Days of Horror film reviews on Twitter. How's it going this year? I guess you're just wrapping up now.
Yeah, I'm in the in the trenches at this point where it's the energy is starting to fade because 31 movies, 31 days, and 31. Even though they're mini reviews, it's still reviews to be done. I'm bogging down and feeling the burn, as they say.
Grinding to the end.
I think maybe though it's been generally one of the better ones I've had in terms of the overall movies I've watched. It feels like there have been fewer than past years that I did not enjoy. I've found something in just about all of them that I've been able to hang on to and appreciate. So it's been pretty good. And
remind our listeners again what your personal Twitter handle is in case they want to check out some of those reviews.
It's just RobCady1, ROBCADY1.
And you usually go about 3 threads deep, 3 posts deep, don't you, into each film?
Oh, these have been longer. These are 5 to 10 on a couple movies.
Nice. All right.
Like a recent example was Army of Dead, or Army of the Dead on Netflix. I that might have been 15. It was a lot.
So he's doing the work for you. We've got scary sounds coming from the background in the studio at your house. All right, so as you mentioned, Rob, we get a 2-for-1 deal here on My Bloody Valentine, as it's a horror film, but the narrative is centered around the corporate holiday of Valentine's Day. So, Rob, an interesting fact about this movie, it was originally titled The Secret, but it was changed to My Bloody Valentine to cash in on the popularity of the holiday serial killer trend of the late 1970s. Now, this was on the heels of 1978's Halloween and 1980's Friday the 13th and Prom Night. Now, this is according to Lenny Blake, author of the book The Wounds of Nations, Horror Cinema, Historical Trauma, and National Identity. So, it seems pretty obvious looking back on it, Rob. Nice to see that Lenny Blake put a name to it, holiday serial killer trend. Rob, as our resident horror expert, what is your favorite holiday serial killer movie or franchise?
Oh, that's a really tough one. It's, as I think I've told you in the past, but probably not our audience. Slashers generally aren't the sort of top tier horror movies I get into. So if I have like a weakness in my genre information, it's with the slasher subgenre. There have been a few that I've enjoyed around Christmas time. The Black Christmas and got even Santa Sleighs with Zach Goldberg in that one. That's probably the holiday centric slashers the more I've seen have been around Christmas time.
I love that now we can just the holiday serial killer trend. It's a
Yes,
phrase
yeah.
I never thought I'd say, and there we are, Lenny Blake with a fantastic book that I actually have on the way now because I can't wait to dig into that as a film theorist myself. So, Rob, we've got a real eclectic group of people responsible for this movie. The film is directed by George Mihalka, who was coming off his directorial debut the prior year with Pick Up Summer, which is a USA Up All Night staple, by the way, and one that we might have to revisit this summer. The tagline for Pick Up Summer is, "School's out and everything's in." So that's fantastic.
Love it.
Yes. So we definitely need to circle back to that in May or June of next year. Mihalka would direct a few more features, including the 1985 horror film Eternal Evil, before bouncing back and forth between TV and film. But by far, My Bloody Valentine is his best-known work. But Rob, according to IMDb, Mihalka has a film in development right now, Needles.
Wow.
So he's still at it. Kudos to him for that. And Needles is described as a hard-boiled tale of a heroin addict or a heroin-addicted lawyer thrust into the trial of his life. So maybe a fun film noir coming up for Mihalka here.
Yeah, maybe. I see he's had a little gap in his work, but it's interesting that he's still going. I credit him that.
My Bloody Valentine was written by John Baird, making his screenwriting debut. He would have a short career, cranking out 2 more features and a TV movie, and that's about it. And sadly, Baird died in 1993. Again, some names here that are not household names, even for a cult classic such as this.
Yeah, and the gentleman credited with the story concept, Stephen Miller, actually comes back and writes the sequel or the remake in 2009, the 3D version.
Now, was he the only one with ties to that film from the original?
Oh, that I didn't dig any deeper.
Okay.
Nothing immediately jumped out other than his name.
We'll circle back around to that remake a little later, but yeah. So, sticking with the original, the unfortunate thing about the 1991 version of My Bloody Valentine, Rob, is that it's really a tale of what could have been. So first of all, Mihalka was recruited by producer John Dunning, who co-founded the Canadian film production company Cinepix, which would produce some early work by David Cronenberg, and in 1979 produced the Ivan Reitman classic Meatballs. So even though the director and writer might have been new to the business, the production team knew what they were doing. They got Tom Berman as the makeup artist here to do the practical effects for the film, and Rob, this was no small feat. Berman's career started as an assistant to the legendary John Chambers on 1968's Planet of the Apes. He worked on 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He even worked for the CIA, creating disguises for agents that needed to get in or out of locations quickly. And last year, in 2020, Berman received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Makeup Artists and Hairstylists Guild. So, I mean, you've got a hot production company here. You've got a young effects artist hitting his prime, a director coming off a promising debut. What could go wrong, right?
Exactly.
But it did. The man got involved. That's right.
Oh, boy.
The stodgy old Motion Picture Association of America, the MPAA, reared its head. So the theatrical version and all subsequent releases up until 2009 were actually pared-down versions of the film. The MPAA wouldn't grant My Bloody Valentine an R rating until several minutes of the gore of the film were cut.
That explains a lot.
It does. So in 2020, Screen Rant covered this saga in declaring that the uncut version of the film is better than the original release. Bradley Harding goes on to explain that after the cuts made by Paramount Pictures, who distributed the film in the US and Canada, the film looked nothing like the promotional material promised. He points out that When the DVD company Scream Factory released an uncut version, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive, and Harding describes the reinstated footage as, quote, extreme and unforgiving, emphasizes the anger of the killer by adding a layer of menace that was missing from the theatrical cut, end quote. So, Rob, this would be like leaving all the chase scenes in Friday the 13th in with none of the kills.
Yeah, I mean, and you see it throughout. I mean, you get just the briefest glimpses of what appears to be top-notch effects and gore work, but man, does it just blink and you'll miss it. And that was one of the sort of the disappointing elements of the movie for me. It was clearly effort was put in a few of these scenes, like, for example, the dryer scene, which
yes.
We'll probably get into that later.
Yep.
Like, that looked great, but yeah, blank, gone.
Yeah.
And now that the MPA got involved, it makes perfect sense. They had to trim all that back.
And that's why I brought up Tom Berman as the makeup artist here, because, yeah, I mean, fantastic looking effects in this film, most of which were left on the cutting room floor.
Bummer.
Harding also pointed out that most of the footage cut were the practical effects by Berman, and outlets such as Fangoria gushed over. So, we're removing footage that is important both cinematically and narratively. I mean, a horror film inspired by Halloween and Friday the 13th, but an MPAA that demands that it removes the parts of the movie that make it look like said films.
Exactly.
It's a recipe for disaster, and that's what happened. The movie grossed $5.7 million total at the box office, while Friday the 13th grossed $5.8 million on its opening weekend, and then almost $40 million worldwide. So, I mean, perhaps a tale of what might have been if it weren't for those important minutes that ultimately were cut from the theatrical release.
I have to agree 100% there that really hampered the film, and I'm sure why it's garnered such a cult following is people have gotten their hands on that Scream Factory DVD and seen what was meant to be seen, and are probably appreciating that, and hence its continued love after all these years.
That release that I just mentioned, it came on February 11th, 1981, of course, just in time for Valentine's Day, 1981. So I have to ask, was young Rob old enough to take a date to the R-rated My Bloody Valentine in 1981?
Well, I was not quite a horror junkie at that point. My horror started mostly with creature features. Like, we had a show where I grew up on Saturdays called Creature Double Feature, and they would often split it with like a Frankenstein, The Mummy, or Dracula movie, and then the next movie would be like a Godzilla movie. And I was there for Godzilla, and my sister was there for the Universal monsters, and it wasn't until later that I started to, expand into the other subgenres. So at that point, I would not have had any interest in it. But I also was a little too young for a rated R movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So the budget for the movie is estimated at $2.3 million. So, it's not a loss for Paramount or for the production companies, recouping double that at the box office, but still nowhere near what they were likely hoping for, especially given the momentum that the team had heading into the production of the film.
Yeah. And to see where sort of the slasher genre continued to go.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that could have led to a sequel, sooner than the 2009 remake.
Yeah. And we'll circle back to that as well when we're talking about the movie itself. My Bloody Valentine stars Paul Kellman as TJ, and if you're asking who, there's nothing I could tell you that would help you place him. Anything.
Yeah, it doesn't even have a photo on IMDb.
And there it is,
Yeah,
the kiss of death.
Tells you.
Our scream queen here is Laurie Hallier as Sarah, a Canadian actress making her big screen debut with the movie. She has a lengthy TV resume, but nothing I can place her from. Can you, Rob?
No, no. I looked through and I was like, well, man, it feels like I should have seen her somewhere else. But most of this stuff I've never even heard of.
She even has a nearly 50 episode run on the soap opera Days of Our Lives. And Rob, I'm not embarrassed to say that I used to be an avid watcher of Days of Our Lives. And I still have no memory of her character, Yvette Dupree. So just can't.
Well, heck, she was in the RoboCop TV series,
Oh,
which
wow.
I watched some of that, and yeah, she doesn't stick out. So
Neil Affleck, no relation to Ben, plays Axel. Affleck has one of the most diverse filmographies that I can remember seeing, doing a bit of everything. Actor, directing 7 episodes of The Simpsons and 2 episodes of Family Guy. He's an editor, script and continuity guy, animation department. He even worked on the animation for the Simpsons movie. So a jack of all trades there for our Neil Affleck Axel character.
The bit I read about him was that he was, an animator, and I thought, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then you see, Simpsons, so clearly, a skilled animator.
Yeah. My Bloody Valentine made its USA Up All Night debut on March 13th, 1993. Coincidentally, Rob, the second film that night was Student Bodies, a film that we must cover sometime soon. It would air just 3 more times, airing a 4th and final time as the first film of the night on February 11th, 1995, exactly 14 years after its theatrical debut.
Huh.
So, fun fact there. All right, Rob, we know the backstory. Now let's jump in to what happens in this movie. A very unique opening sequence to the movie. A couple of faceless miners wearing, gas masks and overalls, trudging deep into a mine, only to have one of them unzip their overalls and reveal that it's a woman, a beautiful blonde. She takes off her mask and then pulls the other miner to her and fondles the hose on his mask and begins to unzip his overalls. For a Valentine's Day movie, I mean, this thing goes in an erotic direction fast.
Yeah, gets right to work.
But wait, the miner then shoves the woman into the wall, piercing her heart with his pickaxe that he left in the wall. Cue the scream and the title card, My Bloody Valentine, with 2 heart emojis dripping with blood in place of the O's. Rob, what'd you make of this opening sequence?
Well, it's the cardinal sin of slasher movies is you're trying to have sex, and right there, it's over. You knew right away.
That's right.
But yeah, the whole, as you said, fondling of the gas mask hose, I thought it was off to a great start.
Yeah, definitely. The mine is in the town of Valentine Bluffs, dubbed the little town with the big heart, according to the city sign that we see in the ridiculous scene where the miners, when they get done with their shift, all these young miners start racing to town to get to the bar with a music that had to be stolen right out of the Dukes of Hazzard library.
Yeah, exactly.
They're rushing back to town because the town is holding the first Valentine's Day dance in 20 years. It's a big deal because, well, we don't know at first. The town mayor kind of teases us, saying, let's try to have fun Saturday night and forget all that other nonsense. But, of course, they can't forget because the mayor gets a mysterious package that looks like a box of Valentine chocolates, but it has a note that reads, from a heart comes a warning filled with bloody good cheer. Remember what happened as the 14th draws near. And it's a human heart in the box instead of chocolate, leaving the mayor to exclaim, it can't be happening again.
Not again.
Not again, not again. So some exposition here that sets up, we still don't know, but thankfully we don't have to wait very long to find out what it is, as he says that, because the very next scene, we've got all the guys and their girlfriends hanging out at a local bar. We've got a grizzled old bartender named Happy, who lays out...
More than grizzled, like grumpy as all get.
Oh, yeah. He lays out all the details of what happened 20 years earlier, and we get a flashback scene that explains how the Valentine's Day dance had been a tradition for over 100 years in Valentine Bluffs, and 20 years earlier, everyone in town was at the party already, save for 7 workers still at the Haniger mine, which is kind of the place that, the industry that keeps this town alive, So there's 2 supervisors that were in a hurry to get to the party and left 5 of the men below, and a methane explosion trapped them in the mine. So the town searched for 6 weeks and finally found one of the miners alive, Harry Warden. But he was still alive because he ate
Dun, dun, dun.
the other miners. And this was another scene that, again, I agree with Screen Rant there was such a quick, barely a second and a half long maybe shot of him eating an arm, like even just nibbling on an arm.
Yes.
And that was a much more extended scene in the original cut, which obviously will come into play and explain. So the lone miner here, Harry Warden, he spent a year in a mental institution, and then the following year, when the town held its annual Valentine's Day dance, he returned to kill the 2 supervisors responsible for leaving the miners below a year earlier. He tore out their hearts, stuffed them in chocolate candy boxes, and left them at the party with a note: never hold another Valentine's Day dance ever again. And legend has it that every year he comes back, pickaxe in hand, to ensure that the town doesn't hold a dance. Now, Rob, as super cheesy as this whole scenario is, I really dig it. I mean, you've got a sympathetic killer, a plausible event, the mining accident, a horrific story of a man resorting to cannibalism to stay alive that essentially turns him into a killer bent on revenge. So what do you think of our inciting event here for the narrative, the backstory of Harry Warden, the miner?
Yeah, I'm there for it. The getting oppressed by the man, left behind because they want to go party while some guys are still working, and it results in catastrophe, and he does what he can to survive, and I'd hold a grudge too. So yeah, I mean, certainly a little more. I don't know how to frame it. Sympathetic.
Yeah.
Sort of origin story for the killer. It's a lot of times it's often like abuse of a child or something really tragic and dramatic like that. And this is a little more just grounded differently, and I appreciate that.
And the timing. So this was 20 years ago. So these are now all the children of those, the former miners. Now they're all working down in the mines, and well, it doesn't take long for Harry to go on a killing spree because he's pretty fired up about this Valentine's Day dance
happening.
Yeah, he starts with the sweet, innocent Mabel, older lady who runs the local laundromat and has been handling the decorations for the upcoming dance. Now, Rob, there's a romantic subplot. We'll get back to Mabel's death here in a minute. I don't want you to think that I'm passing it over, but there's a romantic subplot. There's a love triangle between the 3 characters that we mentioned earlier, TJ, Axel, and Sarah. TJ and Sarah were together, but then TJ left town a while back for some reason that's never revealed. It's just referenced that he went west. So Sarah is now with Axel, and a lot of screen time is dedicated to these 3 trying to figure out, what they're going to do. I did love the scene where Sarah is complaining to her friend Patty that she doesn't even want to go to the dance because of all the drama, and Patty responds with, "You gotta go. You gotta see the dress I've got, cut down to here and slit up to here. I may not get out alive." I love it because, of course, nice knowing you, Patty. I mean, we know
wink, wink.
At that moment she's going to be part of the body count. Okay, so Chief Newby, our chief of police, goes into the laundromat looking for Mabel. And as the chief looks around, he's just troubled by a disturbing smell when Mabel's body pops out of the dryer, and it's all burned and everything. Now we see the kind of point of view killing earlier, and this was another scene that was dramatically cut. And
it had to. I mean, when she pops out of that dryer, I mean, clearly, it's basically her skull comes out skinless, and just so much work had to have been poured into that.
Yeah, and
you get just the briefest glimpse, and it's enough to see that it was good stuff, but then it's gone, and I was, at that point it was like, what was that? Am I not going to get the gore that I sort of expect out of a slasher movie? And
well, when Chief Newbie walked in there, I mean, I was saying, like, be in the dryer, and I was hoping the dryer was going to be going. At least it must have recently stopped. But But yeah, we didn't by any stretch of the means get the payoff on that.
And they absolutely foreshadow that too when she is in the previous scene where she's in there. She goes to the dryer and checks on some clothes and puts them back in there. So yeah, little things like that you gotta love.
They teased it, you're right, and then again, no payoff. So of course we also then get our Jaws Mayor Vaughn moment, right? Refusing to close the beach when the mayor asks Chief Newby to call the neighboring town for reinforcements, but of course the chief doesn't want to panic on his hand and says, no, he's got it handled. So that always works out well in these movies, right, Rob?
Well, especially too when like they know the history and they're both clearly like terrified.
Yeah.
But oh no, got to keep it quiet.
Yeah. Harry Warden even left a note stuffed in Mabel's body that reads, "It happened once, it happened twice, hold the dance and it will happen thrice." So the mayor finally talks the chief into at least canceling the dance. And of course, when the chief tells the kids, no dance, no parties, you got that, you know exactly what they're going to do. The kids head back.
And that was a part of the movie that, like, I assumed kind of just coming in that they're kids, but I don't think they really are. Like, to be working the mine and stuff like that, like, okay, they've graduated high school, but I have no idea. Like, there were two things in the movie that sort of I struggled with in that, because I think most of the actors were in their 30s. Mm-hmm. So you have trouble sort of gauging their age at that point of what they're supposed to be in the movie. And there were initially so many of them, I didn't know who was who.
Yes.
It even took me a while to other than I think Sarah's called out pretty quickly in the movie, but who was TJ and who was Axel, I couldn't. Yeah, so that was I guess a stumbling point for me throughout the movie as to who, when someone was being referenced, I was like, damn it, who are they talking about?
It took a lot of trips to IMDb to figure out who was who as well. And this is a 1981 Canadian movie. There's not a lot of diversity. There's no diversity in this movie, and
no familiar faces.
No familiar faces
kind of cling to as well.
Yeah. So it was difficult to kind of to do that. So, the kids head back to the bar to figure out what they're going to do on Valentine's Day and decide to throw a Valentine's party at the mine. So Rob,
that place is just the best location in terms of safety.
It should be noted, TJ's father owns the mine, so that's why they have all the access to it as well and everything. So, but we've got a Footloose situation on our hand here too, Rob. 3 years before Footloose, right? I mean, it's like when they throw the dance outside, county lines, right on the edge of the county, in an old in the seed house. So this is the same situation. So I was there for that. Also in this bar scene, Happy the bartender again tries to warn the kids about Harry
in a very aggressive way again.
Yeah, almost making threats. It could be you next.
Which there was a point where I was like, is it going to turn out to be him? Like he's really getting aggressive with that.
At this point, I wanted that too. I wanted Happy to be Harry the Miner, but in the very next scene, Rob, we find out that's not the case because Happy sets up a miner suit with a pickaxe attached to a rope on a pulley system that kind of lifts when the door to a shed by the mine, I think. I'm not sure where he was, but it pulls up, meant to scare the kids. And he's like, this will scare them. And, but then Harry kills him and drags him away. And it was disheartening for me, Rob, because, Happy was the only one in town that seemed to respect the legend of Harry Warden and what he was trying to accomplish. It's like having one fan and then killing your only fan.
and this is where I have to appreciate the slasher trope of the speed at which the killer moves. Like, so he sets up this elaborate sort of scarecrow trap, and in seconds he dismantles the trap and takes the trap's place and does the killing.
Yeah, Happy's opening the door to test it out, and then opens it again, and then opens it again, and there's the killer.
And then we also get it a couple times when he puts out candy boxes with hearts and poems in them. It's like, how's he getting from like the bottom of the mine back into town to plant this chocolate box to then get back to the mine to do some more killing.
While wearing a gas mask and lugging a pickaxe, mind you.
Yes. And I do have to say I appreciated the miner as a killer, like the sort of Darth Vader-esque breathing, sort of the POV shots you get from him, and I mean a pickaxe is, you got to think, a rough way to get taken out. Yeah. So he was suitably menacing, and yeah, I like what they did with the shots from his perspective and the breathing and stuff like that. So yeah, a good, what could have been more than a one movie / remake. There could have been more wrung from this, I think.
Yeah, very menacing character. The black, I don't even know what you'd call what he's wearing, but like a miner's kind of protective suit, like almost like a black rubber suit, sort of.
Yeah, it's like a body suit with a gas mask and then the traditional sort of miner's helmet.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so the chief and the mayor are trying to find out at this point what happened to Harry Warden, because he's supposed to be in this institution. The institution say they have no record of him, meaning that he's either been transferred or dead. And, you got to remember, and I love this too, with movies made back in 1981, pre-internet, pre-cell phone, pre-everything, where she had, she said it'd take a couple days. I've got to go check out the microfilm.
Microfiche.
Yeah. So I like that that's an element that's lost in today's horror films. So that was that element of having to wait is usually perfect for a narrative back then.
Well, it's got to be, it's a whole element in today's movies of either sort of brazenly setting up a scenario where nobody's phone works, there is no internet, or you have to work extra hard to figure out a scenario where all that fails that's somewhat believable, and so sort of times were a bit easier than when. I think we see it at one point, sort of related but unrelated, where the police chief is driving to the mine, gets a phone call that someone called the office and said it's emergency, so he has to turn around and go back to the office.
So at this point, Harry and any record of him they've mysteriously vanished. Meanwhile, the kids, they have their party. They're at the kind of lounge of the mine. There is some really clever production design here, Rob. I don't know how much of it you picked up on. At one point, one of the gals, Sylvia, leaves with John. Again, names that mean nothing to just, but that's who they were. And somebody says as they're walking out, Sylvia's going to get it tonight. As they pass the doorway, there's signs on the door that read, "For safety's sake, point out hazards," which, of course, there's a killer on the loose and nobody told them. And then another sign reads, "Your blood is vital." And it's a sign for blood donations. But just, the double meaning here is so thick. And you see this a lot. Did you catch any other kind of clever production elements in the movie?
I did, but I don't think I noted any of them, and nothing is jumping out to my memory. But I did remember seeing a couple instances of signs up where, clearly, someone was paying attention and put this stuff up. And I love that. Just like, as you indicated before, the whole poem aspect, I had hoped there would be a few more in the movie, because I dug that part. It added some character to the film, and we did get a handful, but I guess I expected a little bit more of that.
Yeah. All right, so apparently Harry's officially at the party because a guy named Dave goes into the kitchen and looking for hot dogs, and Harry shoves Dave's head into a boiling pot of water in the kitchen. And again, you referenced it earlier. We can say all these names, but they're interchangeable and indispensable. They're just fodder for the killer. But this was another scene that was cut down.
As soon as you said that before, I figured this was one, because we get almost nothing from this one.
Right. And apparently there was quite a bit of what happened to poor Dave, as his face boiled away in a pot of water.
And we do get a glimpse of him in the fridge or freezer or freezer. Yeah. He looked frozen, but I think it was a fridge. But that gave a hint to that, and I was like, man, where was the connective piece there of the initial aftermath to then see him, cooled down.
Thanks, MPAA.
Yeah,
for ruining it. Meanwhile, another chocolate box delivery, another body part, this time the front of the police station to Chief Newby. Again, there's that speed of how did the killer get from the party to the... And the note says, "You didn't stop the party." And it's great because Newby's like, "Party? What?" Like, he has no idea what's going on. So the do-nothing, go-nowhere love triangle between TJ, Axel, and Sarah finally comes to a head in a fight between TJ and Axel at the party until Hollis breaks it up. Now, Rob, we haven't talked about the Hollis character yet. He's the big, fun-loving buddy that we've seen.
He's the only other character out of the central three that I quickly figured out who he was. Like he's just and likely because he was a little bit heavier and had the awesome mustache, so he sort of stood out relative to everyone else.
Yeah. So earlier in the movie, he had the gang cooking TV dinners on a car engine in a junkyard.
Yes, that's right.
He's the very tropish, big fun-loving guy. Yeah, he looks like a beefy Rob Reiner in this movie.
He does.
Hollis was played by Keith Knight, who made his acting debut 2 years prior to this as Fink in Meatballs.
Oh man!
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So that's probably why he looked a little bit more recognizable as well. So the connection to producer John Dunning is there as well. Sadly, Knight passed away in 2007 at the age of 51, but he had a lengthy TV career, so he was a great character in this. I loved every scene that he was in.
Well, and I love too that they gave him traditionally that character is the single one, and they gave him a girlfriend, and it seemed like they really liked each other, relative to all the other sort of relationships that appeared to be more hookups or the love triangle. If he was in a relationship.
Yeah, instead of being slovenly beer drinker, he was the peacekeeper, had a girl, He was the lover. Yeah. All right, so as expected, Sylvia is killed when her man John leaves her alone in the shower area to go get some beers. And everything about this scene was hilarious. One, they're making out, and then she's like, what would make this even better? And he pulls out a condom, and she's like, "No, beers." And he's like, "I'll go get some." And she's like, "I'll come with." And he's like, "No, you stay." It's like, you stay here alone in this creepy mine.
Yeah, no, we got to split up.
Right, exactly. So then, of course, Harry shows up, and then there's a equally hilarious scene where, she keeps hearing all this noise, and she's trying to get out of the shower area, and all the miners suits are hanging up, and she's getting trapped in them and can't get around, and it came off as kind of funny to me, just the way she was having trouble moving around there. And then
I wonder if that's is that a real thing? Do they hang their uniforms up in the ceiling and have to pull strings to make them drop?
Well, maybe that's how. Maybe they spray them down. Because, they get the lime dust and everything on them. So maybe they do. It was shot in a real mine. So,
which I don't know if you saw the note that they, when they rented the location, the company that owned the mine went in and cleaned it. So when they then showed up, they were like, "What?
Yeah.
What have you done?
What happened here?"
Yeah.
Well, because in that scene, Sylvia eventually gets impaled on a water pipe.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
which I'm sure that was cut too.
Oh, big time. So
because the angle they took when it's revealed, you see nothing. Yeah.
Well, that was a cool shot because there's water shooting out of her open mouth, but it's shot from the side, and yeah, the edited version had a lot. Okay, so. The website moviecensorship.com did a comparison of the original and unedited version of the film, Rob, and so thank you very much to them. They actually provide screenshots of the different versions. Wow. Yeah, and so not surprisingly, this scene is much more graphic in the unedited version, including seeing the pipe running through Sylvia's body as she hangs from it, and then a stream of blood running down towards Harry's feet after he kills her. So we'll post a link to that site on Twitter. It's a great breakdown of the differences.
Yeah, and I'm sure. That's like an inventive kill right there that could have, lended to the movie entirely. You know, I mean, that's what people generally come to for these is, hey,
Right.
what are the different ways that people are going to get taken out? And that's a new one for me.
So the girls at the party decide that they want to get a tour of the mine, and after a few tickles from his girl Patty, Hollis agrees to take a small group down into the mine. So things start to pick up here. Rising action begins to build. Dave's severed head is discovered in the kitchen. Axel bursts into the main room of the lounge where the party is, yelling, "Dave is dead!" while John stumbles back in, telling everybody about Sylvia being killed. So it's finally discovered that Harry Warden is back to the kids, and he's at the mine. So TJ and Axel take control, ordering everyone out of the mine, and they head down to look for Sarah and the others. There's a really cool shot, Rob, of looking up into the mine shaft as TJ and Axel take the elevator down into the mine. Your director of photography for this film is Rodney Gibbons. So he was the DP on Mihalko's Pick Up Summer a year earlier. A lengthy cinematography and directing filmography for Gibbons. Nothing that stood out. He did direct 1995's Screamers, and also a lot of TV work. But yeah, I thought the cinematography on this film was pretty cool. Nothing groundbreaking, but for an up all night film, of course, the production value as a whole, including the cinematography, was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, particularly once in the mine, they had a lot of just interesting shots down the corridors and, as you said, up the shaft. And yeah, I liked that aspect of it.
We'll circle back to your point right there a little later as well. So TJ finally finds part of the group down in the mine, but they've lost Mike and Harriet, who, I don't know. I mean, of course.
Just a couple that split off for some action.
Yeah, so they've gone off to do it. And so Hollis goes off looking for them, and he finds them impaled and dead. And then he takes a nail gun to the head.
Yeah, so, multiple times.
Yeah, multiple. And so, darn it, that's going to do it for Hollis. Axel, TJ, Patty, and Sarah make it to the mine shaft elevators to find that Harry has cut the wires. So they have to climb. And as they're climbing, Howard's body drops down on a rope that splats blood all over them. That was a really cool...
Well, because it decapitated.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it did. I wasn't sure. It all happened so quickly, but I thought his head then bloop, went flying
off.
Yeah. All right, so that's it for the climbing. The new plan now is to make it to the rail cars. And along the way, Axel is picked off by Harry. His death occurs off screen, but he was presumably dropped into 60 feet of water, and we see his mask with the light dropping down, and bubbles coming up. So we got TJ and the girls left. TJ sends the girls on while he goes down another tunnel for some reason, and then we hear a bunch of crashes, and it's presumed that he's supposed to be dead, but it's okay, this is one of the protagonists of the film, so we know that he's not going to be dead.
Yeah.
The girls continue on, and Patty, as she prophesized earlier, takes a pickaxe to the stomach from Harry. She's the one that said, "I don't think I'll make it out alive," which leaving only Sarah. But wait, of course, swerve. TJ is still alive.
Still alive.
Yeah. And he grabs Sarah, and they jump onto the moving train cars with Harry Warden following. And finally, we get a Family Guy Peter Griffin versus the chicken sequence.
Well, just prior to that, on the rail cars, we get like a Scooby-Doo sort of style montage. Right. Everyone moving from rail car to rail car.
Well, that's what. Yeah, that's. Yeah, definitely. And it's a pickaxe versus shovel.
Shovel, yeah.
Right. So finally, just as Harry is about to stab TJ, Sarah pulls off Harry's miner's mask. So it's funny that you mentioned Scooby-Doo, because surprise, it's not Harry Warden at all. It's Axel, who just died off screen a few minutes earlier. I was a little disappointed they kind of ruined the big shock there by not showing. But okay. But then, so we get like a 2-second flashback of Axel. As Axel as a young child watching Harry Warden kill his father, who was one of the two men responsible for leaving the miners down in the shaft. And but even that piece has to kind of get said by someone. Yes. To kind of close that loop. The chief the kids made it back to the police station and told the chief where the party was. So the chief and reinforcements eventually show up, and he's the one that says when they see it's Axel too, and they're like, oh, and yeah, I can't remember how he said it, but it was such a terrible piece of exposition. Like, why are you coming back to explain this after it already happened? Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to be problematic here. I mean, okay, it happened on Valentine's Day. That Axel's father died on Valentine's Day, and Axel was mad, I guess, that they weren't being respectful of his father's death. Two things. Rob, I kept waiting for this moment with all the off-screen deaths that we kept seeing.
Yep.
You were waiting for Harry not to be Harry, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. It just was. You really didn't get anything throughout the movie leading you anywhere. Other than the super grumpy bartender, there were no hints. I feel like, and no indication of who it potentially could be. So I was waiting for something sort of out of left field.
Yeah.
But was, I guess not. Didn't think it would end up being Axel.
And then, second, given the entire movie, I kept wondering, how did Harry Warden, the crazy old miner who escaped from a mental institution, how did he get an attractive young blonde to cosplay down in the mine in that cold open?
You're thinking way too much.
But now we know it. It was Axel, so at least that does make sense. I mean, handsome guy can lure a gal down there. But then second here, given the time dedicated to the drawn out sequence that we at the end that we just talked about, Peter Griffin versus the chicken Scooby-Doo on the mine cars. I'm so disappointed that we just got a mere flashback that is supposed to justify this huge twist at the end. Where's the monologue from Axel explaining why? It's just
and the only indication of sort of anything was his cackling as he vanishes down the mine shaft. That apparently he's just loony. I guess that explains it all. He's crazy.
But he's clearly not, because we've seen him act in this very specific fashion the entire film.
Yeah, it upon analysis, it's a very weak and tenuous sort of justification for slaughtering all his friends. That they apparently having a dance disrespects the death of his father. I don't know.
It would have been nice to cut out all of the love triangle stuff that we saw throughout the movie with TJ and Sarah and Axel, because that served no impetus for that wasn't motivating his killing. And so when they were in the bar and Axel was in the bar, all the times Happy was talking about the killer, the guy that killed his dad, at least he could have said something like, hey, respect the, let's change the subject or something, but nothing, no hint whatsoever.
Like he could have thrown in something about it's also the anniversary of Axel's, dad's passing, something, or in a sidebar mumbled something about that to drop a little nugget for us. Yeah.
Big time missed opportunities here at the end, but again, you really needed to build up to that as well. But we do get something. You just referenced it. They were digging through the rubble because they thought Axel was dead. He's alive. He escapes to another tunnel while laughing maniacally, asking Sarah to be his Bloody Valentine and saying that he's coming for Harry and the whole town is going to die.
And was he missing an arm?
Yes, he was.
I thought that's what I was supposed to take away from that, but I was kind of like, wait a second, is he?
Yeah, and I believe that's kind of leading to this maniacal switch here. Was now he's he's limbless. He's been injured because the cave kind of came down around him. Yeah. Very creepy ending. I did love that part and set up what should have been a sequel perfectly. Mm-hmm. But again, on the heels of a drawn out climax that just didn't work.
Yeah.
So, All right. Well, Rob, this episode's film is more well known than some of the others that we do on this podcast. So we have both a tomato meter score and an audience score for My Bloody Valentine. So let's find out what others are saying about this film. Rob, what do you think out of 100 the tomato meter score, which is the rankings by the critics on Rotten Tomatoes for My Bloody Valentine?
And I'm gonna intentionally go high on this one because I think, as I sort of alluded to earlier, that it's probably altered because people have seen the real movie.
So
maybe. So I'm gonna go 60% on it.
This is your jam, the horror genre. I said it. You're the expert. It currently has a critic rating of 58.
Okay.
So 2 off, yeah. All right, so Trace Thurman of the Horror Queers podcast gave it 3 out of 5 and writes, earns points for being a more mature slasher than others of the time, but most of the human drama feels superfluous. I couldn't agree more. I said it, the love triangle seems out of place, and it's only there to kind of add to the shock value of Axel being the killer at the end, which wasn't even needed because there wasn't any mention of jealousy when he is discovered as the killer. So Zach Handlin of the AV Club writes, director George Mihalka gets effectively naturalistic performance out of his leads, as well as an intermittently eerie mood, but ultimately it's a movie enjoyed for what it could have been than what it actually is. So, I mean, the critics are on it. This is why they're critics. This is what they do. And spot on there from Zach Hanlon as well, I'd say.
Yeah.
Mixed reviews from critics. How about the fans, Rob? What do you think of the fan score is out of 100 for this film with more than 5,000 reviews?
Oh, that's higher. I'll give that a 70% then.
So a surprising, really surprising, 52%.
Whoa.
But now, you got to remember, think about how the little access to the unedited version.
Oh, I should have gone the same route. And
I thought it would have been
skewed the
higher
other
too.
way.
Yeah. So super reviewer Mark B gives it 3.5 stars, and he's rating the uncut version. So I love that they drop in which version they did watch. He writes, this was pure B-movie cheese, which was seriously enhanced by some great kill scenes. I watched this originally streaming and was unimpressed. The Blu-ray uncut version, very fun. The scenes in the mine were the most interesting and should have been at least 50% of the movie, a la The Descent. An extra star for the cool mine uniform, which was the creepiest thing in the whole movie. So, a couple things here. Again, Rob, I love it when the reviewers just jam with what we talked about. You didn't even read that review, and you referenced about how cool the uniform was. And then, I said we'd circle back to this. What do you think about that? More mine scenes for this movie?
To an extent. I mean, that's tough because, we saw what they went through with him having to trash the elevator so they couldn't get out. And I certainly feel like the movie could have had a little bit more time down in there relative to what we got, but it's hard without going all in a la The Descent, where 95% of the movie takes place in these caves. It's hard to find that balance of the two, but this one could have used a little bit more of the mind because, as we said, those shots tend to be the most interesting and certainly lended to the creepy atmosphere and seeing the different components of the mind, where the places where the people showered and did their stuff, but then obviously the work areas, and there were some work areas you shouldn't go to, and then the bridge with the water, that all that stuff added a lot to the movie and the effectiveness of being stalked by a slasher.
Yeah, I love that this was shot on location in an actual mine. I think that really added to the mise-en-scène of the film, the realism of the film. All right, so Greg B gives it 3 stars and hilariously writes, best Moosehead beer commercial I've ever seen. There was
I have a note in my notes about the beer cans looking like soup cans.
Oh, yeah.
Did you pick up on that?
Well, that's what they used to look like. Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah, the pull tabs, the pop tops.
Well, no, like just the can itself.
Yeah.
Seemed way more robust than beer
Yeah,
cans
I think
now.
they were just squared off then, where they're kind of rounded off now at the top. They used to be just kind of
Okay.
squared off the top, yeah. And there was a lot of Moosehead in this movie.
Yeah, there was a ton.
I mean, I wonder if Canadian companies were more film friendly. I mean, remember, this was back in the 80s where product placement wasn't near as prominent as it is today. In fact, it was the opposite, where, now you're getting products paying to have their movies, their products put in movies, whereas it used to be the other way around. You want to have a Coke in your movie, you got to pay Coke.
Yeah.
So
where I just totally see them being like, yeah, we all like this beer, so throw it in there.
Yeah, they're Canadians. I mean, they love beer.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
there's probably something written in Canadian statutes where you can just put Moosehead beer in any film. Doesn't matter, eh?
Sure.
All right, and then one reviewer wondered if the kills made sense considering where the killer was located, meaning where was Axel during all of these kills? Rob, I didn't notice, nor do I plan to go back and watch to answer this question, but a valid point, and I'm sure somebody's done the math on this.
And that's something, once he's revealed, I immediately start thinking about, and nothing jumped out at me as being blatantly implausible, but it would require a second watch to really dive into that.
I mean, you already pointed out the speed in which you thought Harry Warden got from place to place. Now you throw the fact that it's Axel, it's getting from place to place and in and out of his miner's suit.
Yeah. And there's a couple scenes in the remake that just rip that screen down, where someone walks off screen, it comes back dressed normal, and you're like, and then when the reveal happens, you're like, what? Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the remake, because you had a chance to at least watch a little of it. What's your take?
I watched the whole.
You watched the whole thing. Okay, so we said that this was obviously set up for what they were hoping was going to be a sequel. They never got it, and then the 2009 film was a remake, not.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, very much a remake, and it directly lifts certain scenes. It keeps sort of the general plot of the movie with some twists and turns for originality. Unfortunately, they entirely drop the poems. He still does the heart in the candy box, but there are no awesome little poems associated with it, and it's a different sort of, like, Sarah and Axel are married and they have a kid, and Tom ends up getting so sort of shook by the original incident that, because he is a minor, and it's sort of linked that it could there's an explosion in the mine that ends up trapping the miners, and it's kind of hinted that it was his fault or could have been his fault.
Okay.
So he's so shooken by that, he just leaves town, and you learn he spends time in a mental institute trying to get over that it could be his fault. But yeah, like, they lift the entire scene where the uniforms are dropping from the ceiling, and instead of, like, you're not led this time to believe that the miner was a cannibal, and it's only for 6 days that they're trapped. He just murders everyone and ends up in a coma, and I don't even remember how he ends up in a coma, and that's where this movie starts, is he's in a coma and awakens from the coma, and it essentially murders the entire floor of the hospital he's on in his escape, putting the body count of this one in the first 5 minutes higher than the original. And one of the things too that's also sort of hampering this one is they went the 3D route, which, obviously I'm not watching it in 3D on my TV, so I can't speak to how effective that was, but we know sort of generally how effective those movies are. I would say the acting in this one is, for the most part, worse. A few standouts, like the Tom Atkins plays a key role as the sheriff, and he's just fun in everything he does. But like Jensen Ackles, the guy from Supernatural, is Tom, and Kerr Smith is Axel, and I remember him from Dawson's Creek.
Yeah.
And that's about all I remember him from.
Okay.
I know he's been in more stuff. And then Jamie King plays Sarah, and I've seen her in a few things, and I think she originally started as a model. It's relative to the version we saw, it's far, far gorier, and the 3D lends to that. There's also an odd scene that just sticks out, even for the time. This was 2009, of extended full frontal nudity of a character, and I think the longest sequence of any rated R movie I think I've ever seen, where this woman is just goes from a motel room out into the parking lot, back into the motel room, through the whole, like, trying to survive being chased by the minor, and before she's finally murdered. It's a worse film, and I would imagine, relative to the uncut original, a far worse film. And the twist this time, I don't know if I should go into spoilers, is that it's actually Tom.
Ah, okay.
So he is crazy and is having visions of what's his name? Is it Harold?
Harry.
Yeah, Harry Warden, having visions of Harry Warden, so sort of disassociates himself from actually being the one to kill people. But a big part of it is the mystery of they're trying to, Axel says it's Tom, and Tom says it's Axel, and Sarah is stuck in the middle of what do I do? Who do I believe? And turns out Axel's still a POS. He's totally having an affair on Sarah, and
so either movie, Axel's just the worst.
He's the worst.
All right. Well, so Christmas for Rob is over.
And the sequel totally doesn't have the Ballad of Harry Warden.
Okay.
Final credits.
So we'll come around to that in a minute here.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So as tied in, like, just as Axel is cackling maniacally, yelling that everyone's going to die, we get, if Jim Croce was ever hired to do a horror film soundtrack, it might sound a little something like the song that plays at the end. Literally, the Ballad of Harry Warden is the name of this song, and we've joked before about in these types of movies that we watch on for this podcast, where it's explicitly telling you the action that's happening on screen, but you don't get those in slasher films. But you did in this.
We get an actual ode.
Yes.
It's just and I was 100% all in on it. I thought it was a great song, and as you said, sort of it evokes certain people. So I was like, man, who is that? And turns out it's not anybody I'm familiar with. He's a Scottish Canadian singer who's, like, best known for singing Danny Boy. But I loved it. I sat through the credits listening to it because I wanted to hear the song.
Happy was the one that drove that train of the legend of Harry Warden, and so I wish you got more of that throughout the movie as well. But the ballad there was just fantastic. All right, so you've opened all your presents, Rob. It's time to answer the question: is this movie worth staying up all night for?
I would say, if you're going to do it, see the unedited, I guess that would be unrated version. I would like to see that one, to see what we missed out on. But as in the current form, the version we watched, I don't think so. I don't think there's enough there.
I did enjoy the film, even though it was predictable. It was certainly a different take on the genre. I liked the single location, the backstory. The killer wasn't supernatural with superhuman strength. It was just a tragedy, although that's what we thought anyway. The twist at the end, I kind of felt for Harry Warden, but I didn't. I certainly didn't think that he should have been killing the whole town. But I was also sad to find out that he'd simply died in the institution. We didn't reference that, but they eventually found out that he died 5 years earlier. And they kind of revealed that after, right as they were revealing, that it was Axel instead. So, yeah, I mean, I'm most sad that, this film was considered a bomb. There's a lot of meat left on the bone.
Yeah,
literally, because they didn't show any of the meat coming off the bone as they should have. The crazed wounded killer runs off at the end, and who knows? Maybe Harry wasn't dead at all. Maybe he still Axel finds him, but we'll never know because they didn't get the chance to make 12 more films like Halloween's and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street's got to. So,
in the 2009 version, they wrapped that up a little neater. Like the police end up, similar to the first one, going to the mine and shooting Harry, and he takes off through the mine, and they chase him, and they end up he finds an escape hatch, and they end up sort of secretly killing him just outside of that and burying him in the woods. And it's Tom who returns to the woods and digs up the grave to get the old pickaxe and miner uniform to resume.
Nice. I'm going to disagree. I'm going to say, obviously, if you can get your hands on the unedited version, definitely. But even if you have the edited version that's available in certain streaming places, it's worth staying up all night for. Dare I call it the working man's horror film? I mean, with our miner that's stalking the town in his overalls and gas mask and an ominous look. I mean, you referenced it earlier, the cool point of view shot opportunities that we had, complete with heavy breathing through the gas mask. Mm-hmm. And it would be great to have access to the unedited version, and I definitely want to track that down at some point. So, all right, that's going to do it for my Bloody Valentine, and happy Halloween to everyone. If you're looking for a twist on the classic genre, I say check out this film. Rob says make sure you get the unedited version, but just don't go down into the mines at all. And if you do, at least bring a friend, a cool friend like Hollis. And there you go. Words of wisdom this Halloween season. As always, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Still Up Podcast. We'll post some of the links that we referenced in this film, and we'll leave you with the ballad of Harry Warden.
Hell yeah.
Once upon a time, on a sad Valentine, in a place known as Mine, a legend began. Every woman and man would always remember the time, and those who remained were never the same. You could see the fear in their eyes. Once every year, as the 14th draws near, there's a hush all over the town. Or the legend they say on a Valentine's Day is a curse that'll live on and on, and no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago. 20 years came and went, and everyone spent the 14th in quiet regret. And those still alive know the secret survives in the darkness that looms in the night. Oh, the legend they say on a Valentine's Day is a curse that'll live on, and no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago. In this little town, when the 14th comes round, there's a silence and fear in the air. Remember the morn that the legend was born, all the shock and the horror was there. Oh, the legend they say on a Valentine's Day is a curse that'll live on, and no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago. And no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from a long time ago.